Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Today's topic is something that I get a ton of questions about, and it's about living in a 55 plus community once you retire or once you're close to retirement. I'm coming at this from a couple of different viewpoints. One, I've been a real estate agent, real estate broker for over 20 years. I have looked at a lot of these neighborhoods in my day. And guess what? I also live in one, and I've been living here for 7.5 years. I'm 60 years old. So we moved here when I was 53, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. What I want to do is tell you, if I was looking today, what I would look for, what the big things are that you really should be looking. As far as what to look into in these neighborhoods, there are many things that you're going to say, of course, that's common sense. But there's one thing, I'm going to save it for the end. It's the most important thing of all. And it's something I know I really didn't even think about. And now, if I was to move to another 55 plus community, it'd be the number one reason I would either buy in a community or not. So stay tuned for that one. I also want to give you the positives and the negatives because there are certainly a lot on each side. I'm coming at that more from a personal piece because I've been living here. If you're an agent and you're showing a neighborhood, you may not know the dynamics of living in that neighborhood, right? You could talk about the house or the condo or whatever it may be, but as far as, how the dynamic works of a 55 plus, you probably can't do that too much unless you have been living there. So I really want to give you the inside scoop there. If you're looking or considering moving to a 55 plus neighborhood, of course you want to decide what part of the country you want to live in. Maybe it's in the state you already live in, which would be great, right? Unless you want to change. But many states don't have the 55 plus concept. I think it's becoming more and more popular, so you might see some more popping up. I live in Arizona. So, of course, there are tons of these kind of communities all around the state. Florida has quite a few. California has some. Washington has some. I mean, I could go on and on. Texas has I thought Texas would have more, but they only have a few that I have heard about. Some of the states just don't have any. And there are some communities out there that lend themselves to having this type of environment, but they're not officially called. I don't know what you want to call it, active adult or 55 plus, whatever the marketing people want to term these days. So make sure you know where you want to live. If at all possible, I would do what's oftentimes called, for instance, a stay and play or try out the neighborhood, especially if they're still building in the neighborhood. Many times the sales offices have something to entice you to come in. Maybe they charge you X amount of dollars and you can stay 3 nights, but that includes a round of golf or dinner at the restaurant, whatever it may be. They want you to experience the lifestyle. If you can do that and you're on the fence, like, should we do this or not? I would do that all day long, every day. Now, if it's a completely resale neighborhood, they long ago sold the last house, you really can't do that. What I often recommend, I've done this, whether it's a 55 plus or not, I often recommend to clients to go around the neighborhood. And I know this sounds strange, but talk to the neighbors, especially in a 55 plus. Many times there are activities going on, or there's a clubhouse, or there's a tennis court, pickleball courts. Go hang out there or just look around, and people usually are very friendly. And you could say, I'm considering moving here. What do you like about it? And they would probably tell you everything they like about it. But I would also say, if you could change anything, what would you change? Neighbors are the most honest people, I've got to tell you, because they will tell you under no circumstances what they don't like. I found that with retirees or people in this age range, they will tell you without hesitation what they don't like. So you need to take it with a grain of salt because maybe it's something that's just not important to you. Maybe they'll say, they don't have enough lanes to swim laps in the pool or whatever it may be. And you're like, well, I'm never going to do that. Or something like that. Or they might say, they don't upkeep the community very well. Well, that one I would really listen to, and I would really drive around the neighborhood. And you get a different feel at night as well. So, if at all possible, drive at different times of the day, but talk to the neighbors. People are very open about it, and they will tell you more than you ever wanted to know about these communities. So, I would definitely do that just to do your due diligence. Another thing that seems like it should be straightforward, but it's not, is this a true 55 plus? And it doesn't have to be. For instance, the neighborhood I live in, it's not officially called a 55 plus. That's how I was able to move in at 53 because only a certain section in the neighborhood at the time was 55 plus. And even then, typically, you'll have to look at the rules, but only one person in the household has to be 55 plus. But you really want to look at those rules and see, what are the rules for this neighborhood? Many times, people have their adult kids move back in with them. It might be for a short period of time, it might be for a long period of time. There are usually some rules surrounding that if it is a true 55 plus. Sometimes the neighborhoods will say you can't live with your parents or whomever it may be. You can't live there for more than 60 days, 90 days. And you might think, "Oh, you know what? We could get away with letting that person live here for 6 months, not in a 55 plus. I'm almost guaranteeing you that because your neighbors, that's going to be later on, but your neighbors will notice. Your neighbors are going to notice everything going on. That's in the positives and negatives. But you really want to check the rules out and make sure you're comfortable with that. You'll want to look at the age of the neighborhood. And I'm not just talking about age of the people in the neighborhood. I'm talking about the age of the neighborhood. For instance, when we moved in this neighborhood, we were one of the first groups to move in. They were building. They're still building in our neighborhood. They have about a couple more years left. They had just started building in the year before. We were kind of taking a gamble on the neighborhood that it would develop. They were building a clubhouse. It looked like it was going to be done before our house was done. So all of that was very positive. But we also knew everyone moving in was going to be new to the neighborhood. Just like any other neighborhood, when you're all new, you kind of meet each other that way. If you are moving into a neighborhood that's already established, they will have probably activities that you can go to meet people. But what I have discovered, and when I talk to people in 55 plus neighborhoods, this is often the case. Some people will say, which I think is sad, but they'll say, I've met my people. I've met my friends. I don't need to meet anyone else. So they don't go out of their way to meet new people. So if you're coming in to an established neighborhood, it may be harder for you to kind of break in those friend groups. There will always be some people who are very friendly, though. Just it's the nature of the community. But keep that in mind. And you'll also want to look if this neighborhood has been around 25 years, there are going to be people who've been living there 25 years. So maybe they moved when they were 60 and now they're in their mid 80s, and maybe you're 55. Do you want that kind of community? Does that matter to you or not? So think about that. In my community, the people are just getting younger and younger, it seems like, that are moving into the neighborhood. There's a wide range of ages, which I really do like. One thing you'll notice with the advent of being able to work from home, a lot of people are trying to move into these communities a little bit earlier than they would have if they were just formally retiring where they weren't working, because they can work remotely. So they will come to a neighborhood like this, maybe work remotely, maybe travel once a month or every 6 months to wherever they need to go. Maybe it's a part-time job and they can work from home and then enjoy the neighborhood the rest of the day. So it's a wide variety of people. It's not strictly, hey, it's 65, I'm going to move to a 55 plus community. You'll see a wide range of people, especially in a newer neighborhood. The cost. Of course, you're going to have the cost of wherever you've decided to move into, right? A home, a condo, whatever it may be. Now, for purposes of this video, I want to stress that I'm talking about the old active adult community. That was what many times the marketing departments would call these neighborhoods. They still do. I'm not talking about assisted living. I'm not talking about independent living. I'm not talking about a senior community. You know what I'm saying, where maybe there's medical care on site. This is just strictly a 55 plus community. There could be single family homes, there could be condos, there could be paired homes, townhouses, that type of thing. So I just want to make that clear up front. You want to look at the cost, obviously, not just of the home you're moving into. Let's just assume you're okay with whatever home you're moving into and the cost, and you've come to terms with that. There are other costs of living in a 55 plus neighborhood. If you're moving into a brand new neighborhood, many times the salespeople really don't tell you all of those things because they could be viewed kind of as a negative in a way. But for instance, almost all of these 55 plus communities will have an HOA. That goes without saying. There's positives and negatives with that, which I'll get into as well. But there are going to be costs with HOAs. You might want to ask, how much has it increased every year? Some of the 55 plus communities that I have seen have never increased the price of their HOA. Unbelievable. I toured one here in the Phoenix area, very nice community. In 10 years, they had not raised the HOA price. They were going to the next year. It's a family owned company, a big company, but they had not raised their HOA price. I would say that's probably more the exception than the rule. So keep that in mind, but see if you can find out, are they doubling the price every year? Are they just trickling it up? What does that HOA price include? What do you get for that? Many times, some of these communities will have a social membership fee. For instance, a neighborhood I moved into, I think this is a high social membership fee. Personally, after especially looking at a lot of 55 plus neighborhoods, there's like a $9,000 fee you have to pay when you move in. It's a one time fee. Now, you do get a large portion of that back when you sell your home, but you need to pay that in order to be a member of the social club. The club meaning the clubhouse, right? And all of the amenities involved with that. So you want to make sure you know all of the cost up front. Now, in addition to the HOA fee that we pay quarterly, we also have to pay additional social fees to be part of this community. So you'll want to find out what those fees are. However, you want to know, what does that include? You'll really want to tour the neighborhood because most of these neighborhoods have amenities available. And you kind of want to see, are people using them? Are they run down? Are they well maintained? There may be a pool there. There may be a lap pool. There may be a clubhouse, a restaurant, a gym, could be card rooms, game rooms. There could be pickleball courts, tennis courts, golf course. I could go on and on. There could be a cooking kitchen for demos. There could be a craft studio. There could be a big dog park, wide variety of things. So you really want to find out, what are you getting when you move into that neighborhood? They're not all created equal. Some 55 pluses have lakes where they have docks available for your boat. Some of them have fishing areas. So it's whatever is important to you, but make sure you know exactly what you're paying for. And it's not just in the social membership fee. I'm going to give you a couple of examples in my own neighborhood. Let's say I moved here and said, oh, that's great. They have a gym. And oh my gosh, they have all these classes that I'm interested in. Well, guess what? You have to pay for those classes. You can use the gym, but you have to pay for the classes and they can be hard to get into. So you have to ask a lot of questions. How much are these classes? Do you have like a punch card? Do you pay per class? Do you pay per the year, per the quarter? It varies greatly amongst 55 plus communities. So don't just assume they're all the same because they are not. Also, some of these communities have activities which are great. Maybe they have a cover band concert. For instance, my neighborhood had one. It was the Eagles cover band recently, this past weekend. A lot of fun. It's outside. It's really nice. But that's not included in your fees. You have to pay additional money for tickets to go to that. So you will pay for some of these activities, for many of the activities. The nice part is they are arranging them all for you. Some activities could be free. Maybe there's a mahjong club, a bridge club, and they don't charge anything for it, right? Maybe there's a euchre club, but it's a $10 entry fee every week, and you want to see, what does that get me? Does it get me pizza or drinks or whatever it may be? But it's not all included in that fee you're paying to the club. So be aware of that. Ask a lot of questions. Also ask about guests. What can you do if you have a guest? Let's say you have a guest staying with you and you want to go to the pool. Can they go into the pool? What if they're kids? What if they're under 18? Maybe they're 5. Maybe they're your grandkids. They go to the pool. Some neighborhoods, strict 55 plus neighborhoods, will have family hours at the pool. Some will only allow kids certain morning hours, whatever it may be. Others are just like, it's a free for all, right? Everyone can go. And it's up to you. And does that bother you or not? See if you can find out what kind of clubs they have in the neighborhoods. Many times these are member run or resident run. So for instance, here, if I wanted to start a club, I could. And it's kind of neat because some of the times you could have a club for financial investments. You could have a political club. You could have a club. I saw when I was visiting another neighborhood, it was a club for people who played the French horn. Who knew, right? And it was full. There was a room full of people because I happened to see it as I was walking by. So you could create any type of club you want, which is kind of fun, but you might want to see what kind of clubs they have. For instance, if you're moving there to meet people, to get active, you'll want to make sure that community is just not, a snooze fest. That they do have clubs that are active and ongoing. If there's pickleball, because that's become so big, can anyone play? Do you have to join a club? How much does that cost? How do court reservations work? Because it's such a big deal. Do you have enough courts in that particular neighborhood? What about tennis? Is tennis a thing there? I often see the tennis and pickleball people, sometimes they're the same people, right? Sometimes they're not. A lot of tennis people have migrated over to pickleball, but some tennis people are strictly tennis people, and they often feel like the pickleball people are infringing on the tennis people because usually, if it's a neighborhood that's been around a while, those pickleball people will eventually want one of those tennis courts and to convert it into a pickleball court. So if tennis is your thing, you really want to make sure they've got enough courts for the tennis players. Golf. Many times these 55 plus communities will have a golf course. That's not included in the fees. It usually never is. And every neighborhood handles it differently. I cannot tell you how different it is from neighborhood to neighborhood. For instance, some neighborhoods you have to pay a big hefty fee, one-time fee to get into the club, to the golf club. Sometimes there's a wait list to get into the golf club. And if you want your spouse to be in the club as well, that's an additional fee sometimes. Now, in addition to paying that one-time fee, and many times you will get a majority of that back if you sell your membership back, like if you have to leave or move. You want to find out what the rules are on that, okay? Because every neighborhood's different. You'll also pay a monthly fee with these types of clubs. You'll want to find out a same thing similar to HOA. How much has it been going up each year? If at all possible, play that course. See what you think, because that's going to be your home course and you want to feel comfortable with it. Really check it out. Are they maintaining it? Because many times these fees can really add up. The last thing you want to do, join the golf club saying, I can just roll out of bed and go to the golf course. But then you dislike the course so much. So make sure you do your due diligence on that. Some neighborhoods will not make you join per se, but they will give you kind of like a punch card and say, if you pay us, I don't know, $500 a year, $1,000 a year, you can play this many rounds of golf. Sometimes it's season dependent because, for instance, here in Arizona, the winter months are so much more popular for golf. So maybe they limit you as to how many rounds of golf you can play if you're on like a punch card system. Sometimes some of the neighborhoods don't even have a punch card. They're just like anyone can play. It's a public course. But if you live in the neighborhood, you can play for less money. Sometimes they let you reserve a tee time ahead of the general public. So ask all the questions you want to ask. But golf can be a big money pit if you're not careful. So make sure you really do your homework on that. The gym, I'm just going to mention this because this is a big deal in our neighborhood. Make sure you feel comfortable with the size of the gym because you will be surprised. A lot of people start retiring and their health is one of their new priorities. So they are at the gym and they want to use the gym. So if you are touring that neighborhood and you see the gym at 3 p.m. and it doesn't look very crowded, come back at 8 a.m. and see what the gym looks like. So make sure you look at the gym and you feel comfortable with the size. If it was totally full, do you feel comfortable with it? I've joined a gym outside of our neighborhood and I go there at certain times knowing it's going to be very crowded at that time or it's going to be a little bit more empty. I know that going into it. So it's very similar to that, but you just have to be comfortable with the size of the gym. Now, here's a big tip that you're not going to be thinking about, but it is huge. I would almost say this is the number one thing you should be looking at: the ownership of the 55 plus community. You probably have never thought about who owns that clubhouse, who owns the golf course, who owns the neighborhood, right? You're thinking maybe it's the builder, is it the county, is it the homeowner? There are so many rumors, for instance, in our neighborhood of who owns this. And unless you do your homework, you don't know. For instance, the builders owned our neighborhood for a long time and then they sold it to an investment fund. Many people assume the builders still own it, or once they're finished building here, we'll just automatically own it as homeowners. And that's just simply not the case because it's an investment. They're making money off of this neighborhood. They're not just going to hand it over to the homeowners. There's a process in place for that. Some communities I have toured are owned by the homeowners. There are pros and cons with that, obviously. I was just in another community last month. And I was talking to people about it because the homeowners had taken it over. I don't know, almost 3 years ago, I guess. They had to vote and they all were assessed a certain fee and they had to vote to make sure everyone was okay with it. It barely passed, but it passed. So the homeowners own this big 55 plus community. There are pros and cons with that. From what I'm understanding, there are some people who get on the boards of these ownership committees, I guess, for lack of a better word, and they have no business background. So when they see a big dollar amount that is being spent on landscaping, for instance, they're like, let's cut that. That's ridiculous without really knowing what does that include. So what I'm hearing from that community, for instance, they said they cut all the towels in the spa and gym. They didn't want to have that anymore. That was a big expense. Well, now all the members are very upset and they're complaining to the staff in the gym and the spa. And the staff is like, we didn't make this decision. You guys did. So you want to be really careful with that and say, who is running this? And sometimes, just like any other neighborhood, if you've lived in one, sometimes people get on these boards because they have a pet peeve about something. And once that is solved, then they're kind of MIA. They don't come to the meetings, they don't participate. So you really want to figure that out if it's homeowner owned. If it's owned by the builder, are they still involved in building homes there? Because many times they want the community to continue to look good because they're still selling houses. If it's one person owning the neighborhood, I know of another one like this in this area. The builder had owned it and sold it to another company. It was not going well. So a person bought the community and they have a second home in that community. They just so happen, and they had the funds to be able to do this. And this was their background. They know how to run these neighborhoods, and it has turned itself around completely. The people are really happy about it. I think a lot has to do with the fact that the person lives in the neighborhood and they know what they're doing. So you really, really, really want to check that out, because sometimes if a company owns it, what are they worried about? They're worried about return on investment many times. They don't want to spend the money to upgrade something, to expand something. They just want to look at the bottom line. Now, I know of another company that owns a lot of 55 plus communities, and their whole mission is to lead with member satisfaction. If our members are happy, we are going to make money. It's really refreshing when you hear that. And they run a lot of these communities. And there's a reason for that, because they know what they're doing and they've kind of found that sweet spot. They're making money, but at the same time, their members are happy. So make sure you know who the ownership is, and don't just take the standard, oh, I don't know, it doesn't matter, or really look into it. And you might have to dig a little bit because so many people are confused as to who owns a neighborhood like this. Knowing now what I know, that would be my number one thing I would look into. The last thing I'll mention you want to consider is the location of the community. Many times these communities are on the outskirts of town. You're not right in the middle of a metropolitan city. Not all the time, I get that, but a lot of the times they're on the outskirts. And they're on the outskirts because people don't want to be in the middle of the town any longer, right? But sometimes there's not a lot of retail around those areas. Some are fine, but it could take you a long time to get anywhere. Where I live, gorgeous setting. Mountains are out here. It's beautiful. But that gym I joined, it takes me 35, 40 minutes to get there. And the same to get home. So if I want to go to the grocery store, it's 30 minutes minimum away. And of course, in the winter, when everyone's here, it takes a little bit longer. So really consider that when you are looking at these neighborhoods. What's your lifestyle? And what your lifestyle is today, if you're not retired, may be very different than what it is in the future. If you are retired, you have more flexibility with your schedule. But if I'm going to the grocery store, I have to really stop and think, what else do I need? Do I need to go to the dry cleaners? Do I need to go to Target? Do I need, what else can I do? Because I can't get home and then say, oh, I forgot something and go back. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. So really make sure you feel comfortable with the location. And especially as you age, if you're planning on staying there a while, make sure you feel comfortable with that location as you get older. That's key. And I'm going to jump into that here in just a second. So let's talk about some of the positives and negatives. I'm going to talk about the negatives first because I want to end on a high note. What are some negatives of living in this type of community? Obviously, people talk about this all the time. There are no kids typically. So for some people, they're like, that's awful. I want that life around me, all of that. I remember we came from a very family friendly neighborhood. It was wonderful to raise our daughter in it. The first Halloween here, we were invited to an adult only Halloween party, and Halloween, I was probably like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and we're like, what? Where we came from, we would never do that. One, because everyone's working, but two, you would never do that on Halloween. Well, we had no trick or treaters here. There are no trick or treaters. And I remember looking at my husband going, are you going to miss that? Because we went all out. We bought the big candy bars, we would decorate. And my husband was like, no, I'm not going to miss that at all. So it depends on what you're looking for. So it is usually adult only, not many kids. If kids are there, again, it may be older adult kids or grandkids that are visiting. So decide, if you like that or not, but that could be a negative for you, or it could be a positive. I already talked about the location. So that's a negative for me personally. Other people love it because they want to do everything within the walls of the club. They want to get their hair cut here. They want to do everything here. They don't want to leave. And I get that. I get that. I like to leave because I like to do things within the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, try different restaurants, that kind of stuff. So the location is a negative for me personally, but I've been here 7.5 years as well. So things change over the years. The cost could definitely be a negative for you depending on what your budget is. And we've already talked about that, but really look into what this type of neighborhood would cost you. I talked about the ownership. I'm not sure how I feel about having an investment fund own our neighborhood. There are two more I want to mention, and these are kind of controversial, but I'm just being very honest here. I have found there are mean girls in these neighborhoods. There are cliques by far, both men and women. Pickleball gets so competitive, and they always say the women are worse than the men. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And I don't play pickleball. My husband does. And he is one of those people, though, who just doesn't get involved. He goes and he plays and he leaves. So he never knows the scoop of what's going on. And I hear about this later. And I'm like, well, apparently there was a fight on the pickleball courts. And he's like, what? I was there. And I'm like, well, it happened after blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I left. So he just kind of is not involved at all in that. But it can be very competitive and people judge each other on their playing skill. It can get nasty. I'm not saying that happens all the time. You need to find your people. I will tell you that. For instance, there's some pickleball groups of women who are like, we're beginners, we're new, we don't want any drama, and they have so much fun. But eventually, some of those women will become better pickleball players and want to play with other people and maybe don't want to play with the people who are still just having fun. Feelings get hurt, all sorts of things. What I have discovered after 7.5 years of this, and I have run so many different groups here, I've got to tell you, I have seen it all. Man, I think, this is just me, I think the girls that were popular in high school and loved having cliques in high school and were the mean girls, they come back full force when they're in this type of environment. It just comes out of them again, and they like that. And I have quickly learned that I don't like being around that, and I get myself out of those situations. I ran so many different clubs, and the things that I heard and the way I was treated by some of these women, I said, forget it. I mean, I was getting nasty with them saying, well, let me give you your money back. Oh, wait, you paid nothing for this. I'm the one organizing it. But they would treat you like, you're working for them. And they only wanted to sit by certain people at a table. They didn't want new people there. They didn't want other women because they didn't want to be seen with these women. I mean, these are grown women and they're acting like this. So you do see that. We've become really good friends with different people, and we still have new people coming in, which I personally, as I said earlier, because you can always meet new people. And not all of them are like that. But if you just think everybody's, holding hands and singing kumbaya in these neighborhoods, it's not the case. There will be cliques. There will be mean girls, mean boys. My daughter is in her 20s, and I remember when this all started happening here and my eyes were really being open. She said, no, I thought that would go away as I got older. She's like, are you kidding? It's still there? And I'm like, yeah, who would have thought, right? Once a mean girl, always a mean girl. I think that's a negative because these kind of communities are very social. If a mean girl's a mean girl, they're going to come out and be their mean and be their mean self. And what always irritated me, and I've had to let it go, were that people disagreed with them, but they didn't stand up to them. So perhaps, for instance, if someone was being mean to me and obnoxious to me, and there were two other women sitting there, they felt uncomfortable with it. They never stood up for me. They never said a thing to that person because, in their defense, they're like, these are supposed to be my great years of my life. I don't need to get involved in this drama. So even though I disagree with how this woman is treating Karen, I'm not going to get involved. Personally, I will go to her later and say, oh, that was terrible. But in front of that woman, I'm not going to say anything. So that just gives that person more power and they go move on and do it to someone else. I get it though, because it's like, who wants to get involved in that? Unfortunately, I've stepped away from a lot of those groups because I don't want that. I don't want that drama in my life. And people will always say, can you bring back this club or this club? And I'm like, no, no, 80% of the women are fantastic, but it just takes a couple of rotten apples to ruin the whole experience. And you spend all your time on those people because they're the ones causing the problems. So don't mean to go on, but it is definitely a negative. Now, I said there were only two things, but I'm going to mention one other one. You have nosy neighbors because you have people with time on their hands. And in this community, you get to meet each other all the time at these events. You can do as much or as little as you want, but you end up knowing about them. And I said earlier, if you have an adult kid living with you and you say, oh, I can get away with it for 6 months, you will not get away with it for 6 months because your neighbors will notice them coming and going or just going out and, I don't know, putting out the trash cans. And they've been doing that for 6 months and they feel it's their obligation to turn you in. So you have to be aware of that. And a lot of people don't like having an HOA any longer. Well, the HOAs typically are the ones kind of keeping the value of the houses because they should be maintaining the community and they're making sure, that people aren't parking party buses everywhere. And if you have a party bus, that's going to be a negative for you. But to a lot of people, they want those rules. And that could be a negative for you because you could be turned in for stuff. It is kind of, it just gets crazy in this age group. It really does. So be aware of that and either just roll with it or say, this isn't for me. The last thing I'm going to mention is the age. It's a negative as you age. I've been here 7.5 years. I have seen people move here in their mid 70s and they were in great health. One thing happens and they're not in great health any longer. Maybe one of them doesn't drive any longer. And we live out here. So it's very hard for them to get places and they rely on people in the neighborhood to take them to the grocery store, take them to the doctor, to whatever it may be. And they're kind of out here all by themselves. And it can be kind of depressing to see your friends age and become ill. So you got to think about that. And not all of them are. A lot of people are super active, but you trip on the pickleball courts and you need a new hip all of a sudden or a new knee or whatever it may be. And that could lead to other issues. So it is sad. I have seen numerous people move out of necessity, not because they want to, but out of necessity because they need to be closer in or they just can't take care of a home any longer. And that just is going to happen in this age range. So keep that in mind if you're okay with that. Because I have seen some people say they move into a neighborhood that's been established for a while. It's an older crowd and that's all they're hearing is people are getting ill and that's all they talk about as well. You need to remember that. People love to talk about their illnesses. And I kind of shut that down. I mean, not that I don't care. If someone is really ill, I mean, I do want to be there for them. I'm not saying that. But if the topic at lunch is, I went to my doctor here and he found this, and oh, I went to this doctor and I have an appointment tomorrow for physical therapy, and they're out and about, they're active, but this is the discussion. It's just kind of a downer. I mean, I don't know. Some of them do need people to talk to, and I get that. So it's kind of petty on my part on that piece, but I always try to change the topic. I really do. I am not going to sit here and talk about doctor's appointments all during lunch for everyone, but you just need to be aware of that. So the age can be a negative. But I'm going to turn that around because that was my last negative. The age could be a positive as well. As I just said earlier, people might want to live with kids in the neighborhood. For a lot of people, it's kind of nice not to have kids in the neighborhood. I know that sounds terrible. Many of us were parents, so we were there, but it's nice not to have to worry about high schoolers pulling up, partying, in the backyard next door or parking their cars everywhere. So you don't have that at all here. could be a positive for you, definitely. I mean, at night, the neighborhood's pretty darn quiet. Most things shut down here at 9 to 10 o'clock. When you have people over, my husband thought he had died and gone to heaven because almost everyone is out of your house by 9 o'clock at the latest. At the latest. Usually it's a little bit earlier. I was at book club earlier this week, and we are usually done between 8 and 8:30, and we start at 6:30. And some people think 6:30 is too late to start, but that's kind of the neighborhood. It's kind of a sleepy neighborhood at night. Now in the morning, you've got people outside walking. It could be 4:30 in the morning and they're walking. So it's just a different dynamic, but that could be a positive for you. The social aspect is either something that drives people nuts or that's the reason they move to one of these neighborhoods. I'd say for me, that's probably the number one positive because usually there's not an easy way to meet people as you age. Usually it's because of your job you meet people or because of your kids. And when both of those are gone, I don't want to just sit at home and watch TV. I want to meet people. I get energy from people. So in these kind of communities, it's set up for you to meet people, as many people as you want or as little as you want. There, as I said, there are clubs, there are activities, so you can go to those. For single people, I often get questioned about single people. I would move to one of these communities in a heartbeat because there are so many planned events. Now, people who are single, I'm going to go off on a little tangent. Many of them will complain and say, "Oh, this is just for all couples. You're always left out." But I'm going to counter that because I have invited singles to my home numerous times because I could care less if you're single or you're married. However, have I ever been invited in return? And I'm not one to say tit for tat, but even like, hey, would you want to go grab a cup of coffee at the club? We wouldn't even have to go anywhere. No, they don't. But they want to be invited, but they don't reciprocate. So I would say if you're single, you will have to maybe do a little bit more because you're going to have to put yourself out there. You're going to have to join these clubs. And I think if you invite people over for dinner, coffee, or say, hey, you want to go shopping, you'll be pleasantly surprised because people will absolutely jump on it and say, sure, absolutely. So the social piece is really big. I am a social person. I have said before, my husband is social if something's set up for him. He is not going to take the initiative to set up anything. Pickleball is his thing. I call it the playground for these guys because they'll just say, oh, I'm going to go up to the pickleball course to see if anybody's playing. He'll go up there and he meets tons of guys through pickleball because it's an organized sport for him. You know, he can join round robins, he can join traveling leagues, he can do whatever he wants. And there's like a built-in friendship there for guys and women as well. There's tons of women who do the same thing. So I think it's really good for people to be social, especially as you get older. I won't harp on that too long, but I think that's the number one for me personally. I mentioned it a little bit ago. HOAs can be a negative for many people. For me, they're a positive just because of the home value. They really keep the values up if it's a well-run HOA. That's critical. And people the same age as yourself. That can be positive or negative. I'm viewing it more as positive because the people surrounding us, their interests are sometimes the same. Maybe they have adult kids. Maybe they have grandkids. Maybe they're retired. Maybe they're kind of in their latter years of working. They're not in the trenches raising kids and changing diapers. You have different priorities when that is your life, for sure. A lot of times I have heard 55 plus neighborhoods called, it's like college, but you now have some money. And I'm not saying super rich or anything like that, but now you don't have to rely necessarily on the Domino's pizza coupon. That's what I had to do in college to get a pizza. And that was our big thing, right? But here, okay, I can go have a glass of wine with someone, or I could go have a cup of coffee. It's just a different environment. So you're having fun without having to go to the classes and take tests and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a big positive to be around people your own age. Sometimes it can be negative, as I said earlier. If you're around people who are always talking about doctor's appointments or illnesses or negativity, you can become that person. I think you have to be careful, just like anything, but especially here because they have time on their hands and they can sit around and complain about everything they want to complain about. So you have to be careful who you hang out with. The last two things I'll mention here, you can have a really active lifestyle. So you don't have to just sit at home and sit on the couch. You can become very active at the gym through fitness classes. As I mentioned, pickleball, golf, you name it. You can go up and play bridge, mahjong, whatever, euchre. whatever it may be, you can be active and talking to people. You can walk the neighborhood many times. These are walkable neighborhoods because a lot of people love to walk. So you can be very active, more active than you ever have been. I think that's a huge positive for these kind of neighborhoods. And the last thing, I think this is a huge, huge positive as well. There's a sense of community here. So you have people who are nosy neighbors, yes, right? But many times those nosy neighbors will be there for you. I've seen it time and time again here. For instance, a couple, maybe the husband has a heart attack and the wife is at the hospital with the husband. She probably will get contacted numerous times by people. What can I do for you? I've dropped off soup for you. I've dropped this off. I've dropped off that. People always follow up and say, how is he doing? How are you doing? I talked to someone the other day, and her husband had been very seriously ill unexpectedly. And she said, I don't know what I would have done without this neighborhood. And she said, I'm shocked because there were people on my street that I don't talk to that much that came over just to be with me. She said, I would never have had that in my old neighborhood. People also rally around you when it's a positive thing. If you have a new grandchild, they're so excited for you. If it's your birthday, holy moly, a lot of people have these little clubs they celebrate. Like maybe there's 10 women and they always go out to lunch when it's someone's birthday that month. And if you were at home by yourself, you might not get acknowledged for your birthday. So there's a sense of community here that people really do care. And yes, it can get very nosy. And as I said, that can be a negative. But I think the positive outweighs the negative, at least for me. I am certain I could list a ton more and go on and on about this particular topic, but I'm going to stop here. I'd love to hear any comments you have. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the follow button. If you're listening to this on a podcast, I'm also on YouTube. If I'm on YouTube, I have the podcast. Look for me on the podcast. It's never too late. But let me know. What do you think? Do you live in a 55 plus? Are you thinking about a 55 plus? What are your concerns? What things do you really love about it? Do you have any questions? Let's just talk to each other. Let me know what you think. Until next time, it's never too late.